Hello everyone, my name is Abbas and this is going to be a new series called Under the Hood, in which I will talk to the people I find inspiring, and we are going to know about what inspired them to do the things that they're doing. And today we have Attila Forgacs with us. He's a clinical psychologist, a social psychologist, and most importantly for him, I guess right now, a gastropsychologist, right? Yeah. And we're going to know what it is. So the reason I'm interviewing him is I found him as a teacher very inspiring in my first semester of Introduction to Psychology lecture. And when I thought about this series, he was the first person that came to my mind to interview. So thank you very much for accepting the invitation and being the one, in a way, to help me start this thing.
Okay.
So, sir, what is gastropsychology, or the field that you are working in right now?
Yes. So, the eating not only a calorie intake, it has a very, very strong, ancient kind of emotional part. And of course, the eating has a lot of problem. For example, eating disorders. The roots of eating disorders is psychic. Actually, I really don't know why the psychologists deal with other parts of the psychological functions, not only the eating. I think the eating is one of our basic functioning, not only in the phylogenesis, but also in the ontogenesis, in our private life. So it is determining everything in our psychological and emotional life. So that's why I deal with it. It is not only the eating, but I prefer to speak about the oral stimulation. Okay. It can be even the cigarette smoking. It can be also the chewing gum, or it can be also the sucking of the finger, or something like this. So in the original traditional Freudism, the oral function, the very, very first part of our life, the oral phase, which is important for me. And I think Sigmund Freud told only very, very weak things about this. Better to say he mentioned the importance of the oral phase, but somehow it gave us a very wide territory to deal with it. Actually, it became one of the most important something in the clinical psychology. In Hungary, the most number of defended doctoral theses deals about the eating disorders. The numbers of it, the last, according to my last information, it was 18. So in Hungary there are a lot of mental problems. The panic, the phobias, the depression, the suicide, all together do not give us this number. So less scientists deals with these questions than the eating disorders alone. Somehow in this consumer society, the consummation, I don't know if it is an English word, the consumption it became one of the most important life function. And the ancient part of this consumption is the eating, I think.
And nowadays it has become the overall, I would say, as an industry, and now we have the food shows as well. I guess, as you said, that it has just transcended from what we needed to eat to survive to more like a culture as well, right? And I read one of your English papers that you wrote, and it mentioned that nowadays the eating disorders, they are not only specified to bulimia nervosa or anorexia nervosa, but now we have very different other kinds of eating disorders as well. So could you tell us a few more of these problems that nowadays we are seeing?
So the first eating disorder was the anorexia nervosa, and in 1979 there was a psychiatrist named Russell who dealt with anorexia nervosa, patient with suffering with anorexia nervosa, and he noticed that he was a special kind of anorexia nervosa. That was the bulimia nervosa.
Okay.
And it was the late 70s. After it, a lot of new kind of eating disorder began to be known. One of the most important, the so-called inverse anorexia nervosa, which is a body problem of the males who think that they have no enough muscle, and they are going to the fitness salon, and their main program in the life and the main value in the life, bigger and bigger muscle. And it is not a big problem, but they began to use serotonin. No, not steroids, I'm sorry, steroids, to build up more and more muscles. And the steroids are very, very dangerous to use, because it can cause heart attack, cancer in the liver, falling on of the hair, and also psychological problems. The impossibility to control the emotions.
Okay.
So it is not a toy to use steroids. So it's very, very, very difficult problem. After it was in 92 when this inverse anorexia was written and described by Pope. That is another psychiatrist. The name the name of the psychiatrist was Pope. Anyhow, he investigate the steroid usage, and for a side effect, he noticed a kind of body problem, the body shames problem, that was the inverse anorexia. Actually, it is named muscle dysmorphy. That is the official name of this disorder. Then here is the orthorexia nervosa. Orthorexia, that means in the ancient Greek, well made. The orthorexia nervosa is a kind of special food intake. The patient or the person think that there are foods which are beneficial for us, and there are toxic foods as well. And they try to avoid the toxic foods, and try to eat only those foods which so to be beneficial for health. And their only program in the life to eat well. They prepare the food late in the night and take the refrigerator, and the program of the day, the next day, is to eat the correct food in the correct amount and in the correct time. It's very, very rigid and dogmatic kind of eating. Of course, it is absolutely not healthy. It is a kind of monophagy. That means they eat only special kind. They always use a special kind of diet, and do not eat a lot of food which is really needed to health.
So is
yeah.
it something that like eating healthy and strictly, because I know a few people who wanted to build up muscle just like me, a close friend of mine as well. He and he succeeded as well, but he was doing kind of the same, that his diet was really rigid. He would wake up in the middle of night, and sometimes he wouldn't even sleep early. He would sleep really late, trying to prepare the meals, and wouldn't eat anything. But that was for a time being. So for, I would say, like a semester, he did that thing very strictly, but then afterwards he lost the track of it. So would that be counted as a problem and disease as well, or how can one know that now someone is facing this problem, and when it's just being being disciplined?
This Orthorexia Nervosa is not, you do not find it in the DSM, for example, the Disorder Statistical Manuals, which is the official list of the mental disorders. Actually, it is not a medical diagnosis. But nowadays, in the last 20 years, because it was written in 2000, that was it was written and described in the very first part of the century, the 21st century, and somehow it was described by a psychiatrist who was a yoga teacher, and it was published in a yoga magazine, not in a scientific magazine. So he noticed he had a buyer's store where different kind of diet was available and so. And he noticed that he has a lot of buyer in the shop who are the same with the psychiatric patients. So something is not good with this behavior. And of course, this is absolutely not, it doesn't mean healthy eating. It is rigid eating. Only the patients think that it is beneficial for him or her. Most of the cases her, because the women are the most frequently the women is suffering from this disorder most of the cases. Probably the aim of this very rigid behavior is to win on the so-called learned helplessness. Do you remember? Martin Seligman, very important American psychologist, made very famous investigation with dogs, gave them a light, flashing, and next of it painful electric shock. The dog studied immediately that the flash caused a pain, and they began to escape. They had the chance to jump the other side of the box. And when they were able to jump, they were escaped from the pain. But after a while, when the dog was absolutely skilled in this escaping learning, they jumped on the other side, and they get the shock again. That is the learned helplessness. Whatever I do, it was not correct, and I'm not able to adapt my behavior because I always get a shock. That is a learned helplessness. And after a couple of occasions, the dog do not jump anymore. Even if he would jump to the other side, he or she could escape again, but never jump. This is the cognitive behavior theory of the depression.
Okay.
So what is the problem? The dog not able to control what will happen. Whatever he do, he get the pain. He not able to control his life. This loss of control caused the depression. Why? The belief I'm able to control my life. I'm able to control what can I what do I able to control? For a lot of person, the controllable side of the life, what do I eat and what not? What I don't eat? And this kind of control can have mental benefit.
Okay.
That it has an antidepressant effect for those who really believe in a kind of diet which is not good for dietetical, not good for her, but this belief and the feeling of the control able to decrease a very, very difficult and painful feeling that is depression. Okay, so something like this. Actually, that can be a hypothesis. We know a lot of person who really orthorexic. That is a new religion. The former religion was spiritual. And in the 20th century, in the Western culture, there became ideological beliefs and ideological religions, fascism, communism, any kind of ism. And in the late 20th century, the dogma and the beliefs and the religion found a biological function, which is the eating. So this is a new religion.
So as Nietzsche said, that since we have like God is dead and we have killed him, that's why we have lost our moral compass to decide top from bottom and left from right, and so we're clinging on to something else.
Yes, so I think these persons build up a private religion, which is concerned with the food and the eating. And because they do not deal with other values, they do not have a real religion, or not able to work even, not able to go to school even, because they have to keep the rigid diet, and that's why they are not able to function in their life. So if you look at this phenomena in this way, you can trust it is a mental problem. You know?
So do you think that this problem of deciding to sticking to a very rigid diet, is it the effect of feeling an emptiness inside and not having, let's say, as you said, a religion to stick on to, and so because now they don't follow religion, they feel an emptiness inside, which is for sure, if you don't follow any moral code, then there is an emptiness in human beings. So now, do they try to find something to cling on to, and that's why they try to stick to this diet and then fall into depression, or because the other parts of their life are now not functioning properly, or because of the lack of let's say inner, or having an inner void, they fall into depression, and then to go out of the depression they go towards the eating disorder or the rigid eating.
That's a very nice explanation. We are absolutely open. What is this and what is the function? Better to say it could be a very, very good hypothesis for your thesis. So you have to write your PhD, and you took the main thesis of the dissertation. You can compare those persons who have real religion. What is the frequency among them? What is the frequency of the orthorexic disorder among them? And what is the frequency among those who have no real religion? That is a hypothesis, but I love it.
Oh,
I love
you.
it. That's a nice something.
But as you were saying, how can it be for sure proved that it was the emptiness of religion and not any other basic moral code that causes the problem?
You know, for example, the Orthorexia Nervosa has well-known symptoms.
Okay.
And there is a questionnaire which is help us to diagnose the Orthorexia Nervosa.
Okay.
The name or the title of this questionnaire is Ortho 15.
Okay.
It has 15 items, which is concerned with the 15 most important symptoms of the Orthorexia Nervosa. So you can give this Ortho 15, this questionnaire, for a lot of persons, and of course you will find some person who is really orthorexic, and you will find persons who are absolutely not orthorexic. Better to say, do not deal with any kind of diet and do not deal with any kind of healthy eating or something like this. So you can make two different subgroup, and you can take the question. You could use another questionnaire to measure how religious are they, or what kind of religion do they believe, because there are so many religions, and I'm not sure these religions has the same kind of avoiding factor. I'm sorry, I'm not sure that all the religions has the same kind and same amount of avoiding factor which help avoid the symptoms of the Orthorexia Nervosa. So you could compare different kind of religions. How do they able to avoid the symptoms of any kind of mental disorder, any kind of eating disorder, and even in the case of Orthorexia Nervosa, that is a PhD program. I cannot give a final answer on this question, because actually we deal with this Orthorexia Nervosa in the last 30 years, and we know only a couple of things about this, and everything is changing, because probably the Orthorexia Nervosa itself changing in this society. But you know, the psychologist, when the psychologists began to deal with a phenomena, for example, with the eating, at the first time they always think about pathology, so disorders. That is the history of the psychology. But the eating itself can be an avoiding factor, avoidance factor of mental disorders, because eating is good. All of us eating. If we are success, we have the chance to eat more time a day. So it has a very, very basic and very, very important emotional side for everyone who are not disordered mentally.
I would say I would agree that it has a very strong emotional side to it. I remember because when I was at the end of my high school, I was applying for universities abroad, and when I wasn't accepted to one of them, I remember the day. It was my sister's engagement, so we had a lot of sweets as well, and I got the news on the very same day that I was rejected from this university. And I remember that I picked up the sweets and I started eating them. And I ate quite a lot more than how I usually eat. And I didn't really think about that at that time, that, oh, I might be eating more because I'm feeling upset, and eating the sweet maybe is somehow dampening or helping me avoid this sad feeling, or basically the bad feeling. So you think that basically eating disorders are in a way an escape route from our mental disorders, or from mental
Look,
imbalances.
here is the behaviorism.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What is the main reward
Mm-hmm.
in behaviorism? When they teach a rat or a dog or any kind of animal,
Mm-hmm.
when they train
Mm-hmm.
for something, they use pains
Mm-hmm.
and rewards.
Mm-hmm.
But we can take the most of the cases, the reward
Mm-hmm.
is a piece of food.
Okay.
So we are able to change this reward.
Mm-hmm.
The food itself is a reward.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any kind of problem,
Mm-hmm.
sadness,
Mm-hmm.
depression,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
somehow you can give a self-reward for yourself
Mm-hmm.
if you begin to eat something.
Mm-hmm.
And how interesting is it?
Mm-hmm.
You begin to eat sweets,
Mm-hmm.
not something which is bitter,
Mm-hmm.
not something which is the sweet things.
Mm-hmm.
And the sweet things describe in a lot of language everything which is good,
Yeah.
which is reward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sweetheart,
Mm-hmm.
honeymoon in the English.
Mm-hmm.
I do not want to use Hungarian words,
Mhm.
but probably in your culture and in
Yeah.
your language, the good things are always sweet.
Yeah.
Somehow the sweets and the food itself can cause a good feeling for
Mhm.
us when we are sad,
Mm-hmm.
when we are anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Look at a person who's smoking cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
All the bad feelings
Mm-hmm.
make them to use a cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, every good feeling
Mm-hmm.
can increase the food intake.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the meaning of feast. This is an English word. On one hand, this is the celebration, the meaning of the feast.
Mm-hmm.
And the other hand, big eating.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the big eating and the celebration has the same word and describe the same word.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
So a cigarette smoker
Mm-hmm.
begin to smoke
Mm-hmm.
when he have any kind of emotion, bad,
Mm-hmm.
good, or even something is very, very boring.
Mm-hmm.
Not good and not bad, but boring.
Mm-hmm.
That is the moment. So the emotion
Mm-hmm.
trigger the mouth stimulation, the oral stimulation. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that is a very important connection
Mm-hmm.
of the eating
Mm-hmm.
and the emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and it is automatic.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not conscious.
Mm-hmm.
It is not planned.
Mm-hmm.
But the cigarette smoking, for example, or the sweet
Mm-hmm.
consumption,
Mm-hmm.
it is automatic. So it is unconscious.
Okay. And then you feel nervous or whatever emotion you're feeling, you eat, and then because you eat, you feel better. I think then it goes on in the loop, because then you get addicted. I guess that's how addiction would work. As well.
Of course, yes,
Mhm.
yes. After a while, it can be a very big problem. For example, one of the biggest health problem in Hungary
Mhm.
is the obesity.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard this, but the Hungarians are the fattest nation in Europe.
I remember this from our Introduction to Psychology
Yeah.
lecture. Yes.
It's very, very interesting. We are fatter than the British population. So we began to speak about the anorexia. The frequency of the anorexia in the society is only 1%, or 1% from 100%. That is the frequency of the anorexia. Why actually 65% of the Hungarians has a overweight,
Really?
and 30% of the population is obese.
Wow. Okay.
So it is very, very, very high, and it has a lot of consequences. For example, the cardiovascular disorders. The most Hungarian die from cardiovascular disorders. More than 1/2 of the Hungarians finally get a stroke, heart attack, high blood pressure, high blood sugar level. So the Hungarians, most of the cases, die from the fatness.
Okay.
That is the most important case.
As I remember, also, I guess, if I remember correctly from that lecture that from our first semester, that Hungarians also listed highest on the level of depression in Europe. So do you think there is like a direct link between them, that higher the depression, the higher also the eating disorder problem like obesity?
Yes. I think the Hungarians' mental state and the frequency of mental disorders is very, very, very high. From the suicide, the depression, different kind of phobias, alcoholism, cigarette smoking, even the divorce, frequency of divorce. It's very, very high. Well, then 1/2 of the marriages finally going to have a divorce. So there are a lot of problems, and the human, not only the Hungarians but the human, we have ancient experience. When we have any kind of crisis, after the crisis, the starvation is coming. So if we have a crisis, we have to eat to be able to survive. And we have a lot of crises. Economical, political, problems in the working place, problems in the marriage, in the family. There are a lot of different kind of crises, and we have an automatic behavior. If we have crisis, those who want to survive, they have to eat. Even we made a training, conflict management training, at the ELTE, and also in this Corvinus University, and we modelized a crisis, accident at the ocean. We have only 15 different kind of objects. Please rank which is the most important to be able to survive of the thing of the ship. What do the Norwegians think? They think the most important is a mirror and a tank of oil, 8 liters of oil. That is the surviving strategy of the Norwegian students. What is the most important for the Hungarians? 20 liter water and a box of food. That is what the most important. We take the question, why do you need the mirror? What the answer of the Norwegian person? because I'm important. I have to take a sign, an SOS sign for those who going to looking for and search for us to support and help me. That's why the mirror and also the oil is important, because you are able to burning the oil and it was visible. It will be visible in the night time and even in the daytime because the smoke. What do the Hungarians say? Who coming to help us? No one. I have to survive in my way. If I have food and I'm going to eat everything which is available, I will survive. So that is an evolutionary surviving strategy or coping strategy. Anyhow, in the consumer society, we have a lot of food. We always have food in the market.
Yeah.
If you have a little money, you are able to kill your hunger. So actually, it is not a problem. I have to say, in the last 70 years after the Second World War, because before the Second World War, it was a real problem, and even if you think worldwide, there are a lot of people and there are a lot of nations who is starving actually, you know. But in the consumers society, probably this evolutionary surviving strategy is not adaptive anymore. That's why these species, the humankind, looking for new kind of surviving and adaptation strategies. These are the eating disorders.
Okay.
So this because it is visible, we are not able to live like the Americans. This word is not enough to be able to live such kind of quality of life for all these 8 million persons. It is impossible. So we can see the end of this consumer society. That is a real crisis, and the humankind tried to adapt for a new situation, which trying is not adaptive here and now. Some of them will be adaptive, probably. If not, that will be the end of the Cro-Magnon species. That will be the end of the humanity. You know.
Talking about the end of humanity, I guess you will be aware recently Facebook changed their name to Meta, and they started this concept of metaverse. So they said it's the future of internet, basically. And they were talking about it as a combination of augmented reality and virtual reality, and having a completely virtual world where you can pretty much do everything you want, however you would like your avatar to be. And I saw a video against it as well, that how negative the consequences of it could be, that we are going to, as we are even now indulged so much into our social media life, and which is already causing us to be more and more upset with our lives and dissatisfied with our lives, to see that metaverse takes over, which I guess would be the actual future, because the more we get technologically advanced, the more we are going to try to manipulate our environment, even if it is virtual. And when such a point reaches when your own body, let's say, isn't shown to the other people, so it doesn't really matter anymore, because you are in a virtual world, you can be there from your own bed. Do you think having this metaverse, will it increase the eating disorders, or do you think it will somehow decrease them, because now you are not so much aware of your body issues. Yeah.
That is your next thesis, yes. I really don't know.
Uh-huh.
I really
Okay.
don't know. But I'm sure after the consumer society, there will be an other society.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of scientists and theorists think the next society will be the information society.
Mhm.
And you describe this information society. And there will be a lot of changing in our daily life, and we see a lot of changing. And somehow we are afraid of these changings. But probably that will be our reality, which gave a very different dimension for the society, and everything going to change, even the eating disorders. Anyhow, according to this information society, about 10 years ago, we wrote a big book about the eating disorders. 40 scientists wrote this book. And one of my chapter was deal with the new kind of eating disorders. I made a so-called potential eating disorder generator, which tried to describe new kind of eating disorders which are unknown actually. And one of these eating disorders I tried to describe was the so-called computerexia. What is the essence of this? You remember the Maslow pyramid. In the basis of the Maslow pyramid, here are the physiological demands. Hunger, for example, sexuality, and everything which is physiological needed for the body. And according to our theory, we saw that probably in the future there will be something which is much more important, which is not connected with the body, as you told, and some sort of Wi-Fi began to be more important, or the Facebook, the new message, or the result in the computer game. And those persons who has such kind of compulsion forget to eat. That was a hypothesis. That will be in the future. Actually, there were more deaths, which is became the cause of death for young persons who had a very strong flow next to the computer, and they really forget to sleep and eat. And they died at the computer, because the Facebook and this virtual life and these computer games was very, very interesting for them. And they had to be, so that is the new life. If you take the question, does it cause new kind of eating disorders? This new kind of eating disorder is here.
It looks very much something that I would even think that when you describe it, it really looks like something that would happen, because even if I wouldn't call myself a computer addict now, but still I see that usually even me, I skip a lot of meals, which is very obvious, I mean, if you look at me. But thinking about the fact that if the internet turns into a virtual world, it would be, people are gonna be focused even more on that, and that computerexia actually does look something very eminent. Do you so the diseases that you were studying right now, are you also seeing some patient since you are a clinical psychologist, or you are more focused right now on the research and not on the therapy of these people who are dealing with the eating
Actually,
disorders?
I am a teacher, so I have lectures. After it, I am a researcher. And finally, I am a therapist as a clinical psychologist. The early times, that the psychotherapy was the most important duty for me. Actually, I have very, very little time to deal with the pathological part of the eating.
Okay.
Whenever I have patient or client, to you, how do you call them? I begin to deal with them because if they have something which is very strange kind of eating disorder, so I do not want to decrease the weight of an obese person, or I do not want to deal with an anorexic patient who where the protocol is well known. If I do a kind of psychotherapy, it is because I want to study new things, you know, strange kind of things, or new kind of eating disorder. I want to deal with the most difficult cases. And on the other hand, the eating has an emotional side. It is absolutely not pathology. So we have the everyday, the eating has a function in the everyday activity. And probably that is what I really interested in. The daily and the roots of it. Roots from the evolution. How was it in the primates, for example? So what changed in the primate? How did we become a meat eater? And when do the human began to share the food? And what is the status of the food sharing now in the society? So it is better to say this ethology or cultural anthropology, but all of this has a psychological side, of course, and probably that is my main interest, not the eating disorders. There are very, very good specialists in Hungary who deal with eating disorders. Actually, in the university, which is I can't tell, economist university. My main duty is teach and think about the normal kind, the function of the normal kind of eating, psychological functions of the normal kind of eating. That is the unique of my interest. You know?
So speaking of your interest, I would really like to really know that how did you get interested in gastropsychology and clinical psychology and social psychology are something that you did later, but how did you first realize that you wanted to study psychology in general, or how did you come toward this field?
There are two things. First of all, I wanted to be a medical doctor. And there was a lot of difficulty, and suddenly I became a psychologist. It would be difficult to explain why, but I was a third year psychologist when we had to go to the practical, the summer practical, and somehow I hated the system in Hungary. That was before the changing. It was the middle of the 80s, and I wanted to escape from Hungary. to America. And I found there a psychological specialist who had a restaurant and had the biggest library of gastronomy. Anyhow, he was a Hungarian guy in Chicago. And I wrote a letter for him that I'm really interested in the gastropsychology. And he looked up his library, which consisted more than 40,000 gastronomic book. And there was nothing about gastropsychology. And that's why he invited me to Chicago to ask me to speak about the gastropsychology. Okay. But that was not my, I really didn't know anything about the gastropsychology. It was just either here is a psychology with a restaurant and the owner of the biggest library of gastronomy. I thought he must be a gastropsychologist. So it was a very, very difficult moment. So I was closed into this library for a summer, and I began to read everything about the eating. And that was the moment when I began to think about the gastropsychology, and I'm not able to escape from this topic. Somehow that's became my professional life. I wrote my thesis and everything on this issue, the eating. So that was the story. It was absolutely by chance, absolutely, because I wrote a lot of letters for other scientists, and I told them that I'm really interested in his topic, and no one answered to my letter. And it was not easy to go to the Western world from a socialist country, but because there was an invitation, and he sent me the ticket to the airplane because I had no any money. So that was my only chance to escape from Central Europe and go to America, study something which is very, very new, and which was still not existed in those times. But it was not the time of the eating disorders. The final years, there was a changing in the final years when the eating disorder became a central problem of the mental disorders. That is the last 20 years. And I began to deal with the eating, how many years ago? 35 years ago. So I had 15 years breaking when I investigate the eating for myself, because nobody thought that it is an interesting and really important topic. Nobody thought in my environment, in the psychological society.
And as you mentioned before the video that you started to have interviews with, and I saw the one with television as well. So how was that? How did people notice that you were doing something that is so different from the norm, basically studying gastropsychology? When was the first time that someone approached you for the interview?
I gave my first interview in before the changing. It was the late 80s. I'm not sure, but 89. It was in 89, and because that was the time of the changing, the society began to open the interest towards the Western world, and I was interviewed not because the but because I traveled to the
Okay.
USA, and I am probably only a very strange kind of person who spent summer in USA. You know that was the reason. And on the other side, the eating probably became into the focus of the interview, but that was not the reason.
Okay. So the main reason was
the experience in the USA, which was a week, and so, but in a society which is changing and try to decrease this closeness. I'm not sure that this society was absolutely success in this changing, but those times we were very, very optimistic. But it was 30 years ago.
I also noticed that you have a Wikipedia page.
Yes, in Hungarian language.
Yeah, it is in Hungarian. I tried to translate it.
Yeah.
And I found a lot of information about you there as well. Who created that page, by the way?
I really don't know.
Okay, because someone said that you cannot create your own Wikipedia page, and there was something talks about it there. So in the Wikipedia page, I also saw that you got a lot of awards for being the best teacher in, I guess, Debrecen University,
yes,
and as well as here in Corvinus.
I became 6 times the best teacher in different kind of universities.
And I think I can assure that you deserve to be that because of your method of teaching. I don't know.
You are very, very polite. I love to teach. I love to have a lecture, and I love the students. So it is not a work for me. That is my top of my life. And I have the only success in the searching, publicating something, and have a lecture. And if it is good, that is the aim of my life. So
yeah, because I also generally think that because a lot of people who do research, for them it's usually not so easy to describe their research in a way that attracts attention of students. And I think what we found in your lectures that you did that very successfully, because I guess your lecture was the one in which most of our class was filled with students, and in the other lectures there weren't really so many of them. And so what do you think is, or since you said that you really like doing that, but what goes in your mind when you go for a lecture or when you go to teach students? And what's the philosophy of being a teacher or teaching for you?
I have a lot of philosophy. I don't know if I'm a success in it, but one of my philosophy, I have to help students to be better than me.
Okay.
Not only tell them what to know. It's not enough. Objective things. I have to help the students be creative, innovative, and have an open mind. So I can tell a lot of theory and a lot of theorists and a lot of phenomena to be able to change. The innovation is the essence of any kind of science, you know. And the facts itself are very, very important, but not enough. So the aim of my teaching, give different kind of aspects and widening the perception to be able to be innovative. If the students will be the same like we, that is a reproduction. This is nothing. If the students will be less than me, in that case, that will be degeneration, I think. The next generation will be degeneration. If I'm successful teaching, the next generation will be better than me. And that is the development. And that is the aim of the society. Be better. Always be better. No more than the former societies. And it is not very easy, but probably that is the unique of my teaching. I do not want to teach the textbook itself, even if that is very important, but the innovation. Study everything and change your mind. Do not think, what do I think? I try to inspire the next generation, and if you were inspired, in that case, I'm very happy because that was the aim.
Yeah, I think you succeeded at least in inspiring one, and I know a lot of people who got inspired by you in our class.
And don't forget, that was a foreign language for me, so my English is terrible. So it is very, very difficult to me to think in English and tell anything in English. So I'm not the most effective in the foreign language, and I know it.
I would imagine how you would be in Hungarian. I have a lot of other questions, but you have a limited time. But anyhow, probably we can have some other session. But for now, thank you very much for your
You're
time.
welcome. Thank you for your interest and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.